If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all of our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. See the show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading news.
Hey, New Mexico. Welcome to another episode of Rounding Up the Roundhouse, the Albuquerque Journal's legislative podcast. I'm Dan Boyd, and I'm joined today by Representative Christine Chandler. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here, Dan. Really happy to visit with you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Representative Chandler is the chairwoman of the House Judiciary Committee. This is her fourth term in the legislature, representing a district that based in Los Alamos, but also includes some of the outlying communities around Santa Fe and some other areas. And kind of diving right in, I know you've been, among other bills this year, sponsoring a bill dealing with medical malpractice that would make some significant changes. How did you get involved in that issue, and what are you trying to accomplish with the bill?
Well, I think we've been hearing from our constituency that they're struggling to get access to health care in the state. I mean, we all have been hearing that really for the last couple of years now. And although there are many reasons for that, I think we have to acknowledge medical malpractice and the litigation environment in the state is one of the contributing factors to our inability to attract doctors here. So I think it behooves us as a legislature to take that very important issue on, along with many other things that we can talk about as well. But medical malpractice is an issue. We can't step away from it, and I think we really have to address it head on this session.
And like you said, I mean, it's a complicated issue with a lot of moving parts. In its first committee hearing, your bill was amended, kind of despite some of your objections to it. What can you kind of say about where the bill's at now and kind of its status now that we're halfway through the 30-day session?
So yeah, let's step back a little. The bill as presented placed a cap on punitive damage awards and elevated the standard of proof. And I know I'm getting very technical, but I think people need to understand kind of the initial bill. And what the amendment did is it limited the caps to a very narrow group of providers. They refer to as natural person providers, and a few rural hospitals might benefit from the cap, and even that's disputable. So the vast majority of healthcare providers in the state would not benefit from what that amendment would propose to do. And that would include independent clinics would not benefit from any kind of cap. So that's your gastro and, when you go in for a colonoscopy, those folks probably wouldn't be covered. My practice group where I get my primary care would not be covered because most medical practices are incorporated, and they employ their doctors and a whole array of staff. So I think the amendment is misguided, doesn't do what it purports to do, and in fact doesn't encompass enough healthcare providers really to make a dent in what we're trying to do. And that is to get our arms around runaway punitive damage awards, which are threatening really to individual providers as well as institutional providers. And so my hope will be that we'll be able to address that in House Judiciary through various means and get back on track to provide a well-balanced medical malpractice bill that actually sends a message to healthcare providers across the country that we're serious about reforming our Medical Malpractice Act.
And you mentioned during the first committee hearing on that bill that there's a lot of noise surrounding the issue, and was curious a little bit more kind of, what you meant by that, and how do you kind of approach an issue where there really are kind of entrenched sides or people who really feel passionately, on different sides of the issue?
It's been an extraordinarily polarizing issue. probably one of the most polarizing since I've been in the legislature, because I think it pulls on everyone's heartstrings. Of course, we feel great empathy and sympathy for patients who've been injured through medical malpractice, but we're also struggling with an idea that we want to protect our doctors as well from lawsuits that are not well founded, and also we want to make sure all patients in the state have access to health care. So it's a struggle, and it's kind of a little bit of a battle between the titans. We have the trial lawyers who've been vilified by one segment of the population. We have what people refer to as corporate medicine, who've been vilified for from another angle. And frankly, after a while, many of us have just gotten frustrated, because all we hear is the talking points about the vilifying the trial lawyers, vilifying the corporate medical types, and nobody's offering real solutions. So this summer, I thought, I just want to understand the nuts and bolts of medical malpractice, the real law. What are we dealing with? Maybe do some research on what kind of judgments have been happening. Is it really true that they're out of control? And then look at what other states do and just come up with something that I think is reasonable, in line generally with how other states do things, so that, we're not an outlier in the country in terms of how we address medical malpractice. So that was my goal, and I think I've done it. I've tried to not go one way, overboard one way or another, and I focus primarily on punitive damages and a few other items. There are things that people brought to my attention. Venue shopping was something that people wanted me to look at, and I did. Capping attorneys' fees is something people wanted me to look at, and I did. And I evaluated all of them, and it really came down to the core, and I think it's mostly the punitive damage issue. If we can make a dent on that, I think we've made progress.
And I was interested. You mentioned that you'd been working on this issue for months, leading up to the session this year. And last year, you also carried a very complicated bill dealing with kind of civil commitment issues. I mean, are these
Right.
bills where you just decide you're going to kind of tackle them, or is this something where leadership kind of asks you to take the lead on some of these issues, or how does that kind of the origins of these
Yeah.
highly technical bills?
Mostly they're things that interest me. And I felt, at least in the medical malpractice context, I felt like, okay, we're hearing about this a lot. I am an attorney. I've practiced in civil litigation environment. I thought maybe I had a background was well suited to look at it in some ways that maybe some of my colleagues weren't positioned to deal with. So definitely, I wanted to be of service, really, to my colleagues, to see if I could come up with something that's generally reasonable. And I want to say I felt like I did. Remember that we have it's a bipartisan bill, right? So I'm co-sponsoring it with Minority Leader Armstrong, and a number of my colleagues have signed on from that are both Republicans and Democrats. So that, I think, is a testament to the balance. AI. I got interested in AI a couple of
I
years
was going to
ago
ask you about
because
that one too. So.
I'm trying to think about how it was. I started participating in working groups that meet across the country, state legislators who are interested. Federal governments that kind of advocated their role to regulate this very important and potentially positive tool, but also very threatening in terms of our children and vulnerable people who may not really appreciate what's going on in terms of how they have the ability to scrape data from your phones and your computers. They utilize that data. They have access to all sorts of private information that's on your phones and computers. And we need to have some responsible regulatory regime. So yes, it's something I have been studying and working on with my colleagues. This year hasn't been a great year for us in terms of trying to move forward, partly because I think the governor's more focused on other issues in terms of messaging. Next year, I think there's going to be a real push to try to develop some strong regulatory regimes, perhaps looking at other states like California that are seeing some success in the AI, where they're trying to balance access, but also ensuring that there aren't abuses. So yes, that's how most of the issues that I pick up on are kind of something strikes me as maybe people aren't focused on this yet, and I think that I want to learn about it more and see if I can help.
And I'm glad you brought up the AI regulations. I was going to ask you about that as well. I think it's been at least the second year or a few years now that you've had kind of bills
Yeah,
dealing with AI regulations, and does it make it difficult
yeah.
that a lot of people are still getting up to speed, and a lot of fellow legislators with AI and kind of this new reality that seems to be evolving this technology so quickly?
I think it does. It's the reason I think it's difficult is a kind of multifold, but one is it's a complicated area. And so it's very hard to describe to people what the issues are and how we can address them. The language that's used and the terminology is not familiar to people. So there's a whole learning curve in explaining that. And and truthfully, if I'm going to be honest with you, the tech companies want no regulation. So their lobbyists are prevalent in all of the state capitals of the country as well as the federal government. And I think they confuse people because it's easy to talk about things in a way that people don't understand. And as a result, we are always trying to play catch up in terms of explaining to people what's really going on in terms of what the companies are doing and how we can address their concerns.
And it seems like even in politics, we're seeing, I think one of your bills deals with specifically with these deep fake images and things like that. I mean, kind
Yeah.
of people not always knowing if the things they're seeing on the internet are real videos or real footage or not. And I know that's something the media's been dealing with as well. But I mean, I'm curious kind of your perspective
Yeah.
since you're in the political area, kind of if there's kind of growing concern about these, what's real and what's not.
I think 100% people have recognized more and more we have to deal with the deep fake issue. Intimate deepfakes and other forms of fake imagery. AI is so good at replicating your image and replicating your voice. It's harder and harder to know what is real and what isn't. And I don't know, with regard to the kidnapping in Arizona, I don't know if you've gone, there is concern of the family that even if they get a photograph or an image of the mother who's been kidnapped, will it be real? That's the kind of things that we're all having to address right now. Will it be a real image? And they're asking for proof of life that goes beyond just a picture and the like, because you can't trust pictures anymore. You
Hmm.
can't trust them. So we really need to get our arms around how the imagery and the voice and all of those things are being used and regulate them. We don't want to prohibit the use of artistry and the like, but we also don't want people's images to be misused and abused.
Well, it sounds certainly like an issue we'll be hearing more about, and I would imagine kind of only more debate in coming years on that and how to set those guardrails. Um, Circling
Yes.
back, quickly to the medical malpractice issue, do you have any sense when, as chairman of House Judiciary, when that bill might come up in your committee?
Tomorrow.
So that's
We're going to hear the
newsy.
bill tomorrow after the floor session, and hopefully we'll have a really meaningful, policy-oriented kind of conversation, and I think we will. I'm sure, Dan, you watch our committee pretty routinely. We have some very bright, thoughtful people, and I'm certain we're going to have a conversation that's focused on the issues and trying to solve the problems that we're trying to address.
And does it get, we're now in the final 2 weeks of the session. I mean, uh, does the clock become a factor, so to speak, or a little bit of urgency to get the bill to the House floor and then over to the Senate side at this point in the session?
Well, you've seen this too, though. If a bill is an important bill and is starting to get traction, then we can move it. So my hope is we'll get it out of House Judiciary. I don't count my chickens until they've hatched or whatever that is. That saying is. But, we'll do our best to try to get it out of House Judiciary. And then, of course, then it's up to the Speaker to schedule it at a time. But things gain momentum. If something's a priority in a 30-day, it can move. And we still have 2 weeks, which sounds crazy to people, I'm sure, in terms of a lot of time, but we still have plenty of time to move it over to the Senate. And my hope is we'll be able to have a thoughtful conversation about the bill there as well.
Yeah, and I can know from my experience that 2 weeks in legislative time can be in
That's right.
eternity. So before I let you go,
That's right.
I know you're busy, but we like to sometimes end the podcast on a lighter note, kind of asking guests kind of what your go-to snack is during these long days at the Roundhouse. If there's a food or a beverage that you
God,
rely on to kind of keep you going during these these final
I
days
am
at the.
so boring. I am so boring. Really, I eat a lot of hard-boiled eggs and tuna fish during the legislature. So, um, frankly, really incredibly dull foods. But yep,
But rich in
keep
protein,
my
so that's
strength up.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
that's my goal, really. And exactly. Try to stay away from the carbs.
and the energy drinks, I guess, as well. So, um,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
well, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk about some of these important bills, and look forward to kind of continue covering them, in the coming weeks. You can find our stories at
Yeah.
abqjournal.com, and yeah, thanks so much, Representative, for taking the
Yeah.
time
And I
to chat.
appreciate the coverage and all the work that you do, Dan. Thank you.
No, thank you. And just for listeners out there, you can find these podcasts at our website, also on YouTube and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks to Representative Chandler, and thanks to everyone for listening.